Okay, I think the answer is going to be yes. But have you ever had a friend or a family member who manages to find a way to talk about themselves always, even when the topic isn't about them, or you're going to them to vent or talk about a problem?
Yeah, well, it turns out there's a name for it. The National Institutes of Health calls this behavior conversational self-focus. So essentially, it's when someone has the tendency to redirect conversations toward themselves and away from others. So here to explain more, we have Dr. Jen Hartstein. She is a psychotherapist and dear good friend of the show.
Yes.
Dr. Jen.
Everybody.
Yeah, look, first off, why do people do this? And do they even realize they're doing it?
So we do it for a lot of reasons, right? We do it because maybe we just can't pick up on social cues real well, or maybe we're anxious, or maybe we're depressed, right? There's some research that says when you're depressed, you get kind of caught in a loop and you can't actually get out of that loop. Maybe we don't feel like we're not paying attention enough, or maybe our own self-esteem kind of forces us to insert ourselves. So I do think that people don't always know, because I think actually if they realized they were doing it, they would probably be mortified at the impact it has on their relationships and not want to do it.
So you're saying sometimes it is unintentional. Is this something that can get worse over time, people develop over time, and how do you kind of walk it back?
It's a really important question. I think that if we don't talk to the person who's doing this about what they're doing, it doesn't necessarily get worse, but it certainly doesn't get better.
Right.
Right? So we have to be able to have some conversations with somebody who's doing this in our life to redirect it back to ourselves, right? And so if we kind of stay in that loop, it's going to keep us pushing people away. So it actually will impact our relationships in really negative ways, which then keeps us more stuck, right? So learning how to handle it is a really important skill.
But how?
Yeah,
do we actually
exactly.
approach
Exactly.
those people? Because I feel like some people, you know, I know people who just aren't built for criticism. They just, it's like they melt down when they hear something like that, and they become so defensive. How can you sort of break through that defensive barrier?
So we've talked about this at other times, where validation is your best friend in these moments. So being able to say to someone, hey, I notice that when we're together, you do this all the time, and I understand you have a lot going on, and I really need some me time in some of these conversations. So you need to be honest. You need to have those boundaries, right? We need to be able to have open conversation. And very often this happens in couples. So you might actually need to kind of seek out some help to figure out how to communicate better.
Dr. Jen, as we sit here, let's say someone's watching and they recognize, I might be that person, and they want to take it on themselves to sort of reverse that behavior, but it's a hard habit to break. So what are some steps we can take if we recognize these tendencies in ourselves?
I think the one thing you just said is so important, Vicki, which is, are you mindful of the fact that you're doing it? I think we aren't always aware, but if I stop and I'm like, wait, do I do that? That mindfulness and that awareness is like step one. And then I want to notice, what is it that I'm doing? Am I leaving time for you to talk back to me? Am I always like, yeah, but, or jumping in, or creating space for, you in those conversations? And then maybe I really do need to go seek some support so that I can learn how to do it better, right? And I think the thing I love in the research that I did was this idea of creating self-focused time. So maybe calling you up as my friend and saying, hey, Morgan, I need 15 minutes. Can you give it to me? Let's set a timer. I really just need to download whatever's happening for me. And then that timer goes off and it's like, okay, let me rein it in. Let's talk about whatever else we need to talk about.
Oh,
it's so interesting because a lot of these topics we talk about, we learn a lot of these behaviors at home, or we sort of are able to soften some of our rough edges at home, right? Especially those of us who come from big families. Like, you see a different personality type in every person, right? In your family. What if it's your kid? Like, how do you teach your kid the social graces, but also the deeper empathy to genuinely be curious about another human?
Right. Well, I think this is a really important soft skill, like empathy, right? And resilience. And so we want to teach them how to listen, right? So we have to model good listening. If your kid is talking to you, give them your attention. Model what that looks like. Make eye contact. You guys are nodding at me, right? That's amazingly beautiful nonverbal communication. We want to teach them what's reciprocal conversation. So we can make it fun. We can make games about it. And I think all of that is really important ways to teach them how to ask an open-ended question, those kinds of things.
There were a couple bullet points on that graphic, the open-ended questions, teaching how to ask those, and also how to paraphrase. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, so we want to kind of say, so what I'm hearing you say, right? That's what we say as adults, right? But for kids, we can be like, oh, so did you have a good day at work? You can reflect it back in some ways, and that's such an important way to let people know you're in it with them and that you're really hearing them.
We're really hearing you, Dr. Jen Hartstein, as always. Thank you so, so much.
And stay right here. You are watching NBC News Daily.